In 1934, a woman died, but the strange part was this. Even years later, when her grave was opened, officials had to work wearing special protective equipment because her body was still, and still, dangerous. She was a scientist who showed humanity a new light, but was slowly destroyed by that very light. Her name was Marie Curie. She was the first woman to win a Nobel Prize, and also the first person in history to win it twice. But the price of her success was a slow and painful death. She was born in 1867 in Warsaw. At that time, the city was under the rule of the Russian Empire. Her family was educated, but they lived under strong political pressure. She lost her mother at a very young age. Her father was also removed from his position. She grew up surrounded by difficulties. But even at a young age, she understood one thing. Knowledge was freedom. At a time when women were not even allowed to attend university, she secretly joined underground classes. She worked for years to achieve her dream. Finally, she went to Paris. At the Sorbonne, she began studying physics and mathematics. There were days when she went hungry. There were nights when she slept in cold rooms without a blanket. But she never gave up. In Paris, a man entered her life and changed everything. Marie Curie. Together, they began studying the mysterious rays emitted from uranium. Marie gave a name to this unknown phenomenon: radioactivity. Their laboratory was incomplete. Their equipment was old. They had no money. They boiled tons of pitch-blende ore, stirred it and waited for long periods of time. And one day, they obtained a glowing substance: radium. At that moment, they did not realize it, but humanity had just opened the door to a new era. In 1903, she won the Nobel Prize in Physics. In 1911, she received the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. 2 Nobels, 1 life. But this success also meant living with an invisible enemy. At that time, no one truly understood what radiation could do. Marie carried the tubes in her pockets. She mixed the glowing substances with her bare hands. Radium salts often sat on her desk. That light was actually a silent poison. In 1906, Pierre Curie lost his life in a tragic traffic accident. Marie suddenly found herself alone. 2 daughters, unfinished research, and grief. Most people would probably have stopped at that point, but she did not know how to stop. She became the first woman to teach at the Sorbonne. She took over her husband's academic chair. But her greatest test had not yet arrived. In 1914, the war began. On the front lines, thousands of soldiers were being shot. Doctors often couldn't even see where the bullet was. Surgeries were performed almost completely blind. Marie noticed something. If X-ray machines could be brought to the front lines, lives could be saved. And she did it. She developed mobile radiography units. Soldiers began calling these vehicles Little Curies. She also went to the front lines herself. She personally helped install the machines. She assisted in imaging wounded soldiers. She became, in many ways, the right hand of the surgeons. Thousands of lives were saved, but every scan, every X-ray, added a little more radiation to her body. There was no protective equipment, no lead aprons, no safety standards. Science was moving forward, but her body was slowly moving toward collapse. By the 1920s, her health began to deteriorate. Constant fatigue, endless weakness, pain, vision problems. At the time, no one could know the exact cause, but today we know. Prolonged exposure to ionizing radiation. In 1934, a diagnosis was finally made. Aplastic anemia. Her bone marrow could no longer produce enough blood cells. This disease is now strongly linked to radiation exposure. She was taken to a sanatorium in the French Alps. Clean air, silence, mountain views, but it was already too late. On July 4th, 1934, at the age of 66, she passed away. It was not a sudden farewell. It was a slow goodbye built up over years, a lifetime devoted to science, and a body claimed by that very science. But the story does not end here. Decades after her death, her grave had to be opened, and inside there was something no one expected. In 1995, the French government wanted to honor her with national recognition. They decided to move her to the Pantheon in Paris. But there was a problem: radiation. Officials took measurements before opening the grave. Air samples were collected. Radiation levels were carefully analyzed. Finally, the grave was opened. The wooden coffin had decayed, but inside was a lead-lined coffin. It had been specially made because her body was thought to be radioactive. When the lead coffin was opened, there was not just a skeleton, nor dusted remains. Her body was surprisingly preserved. Facial features were recognizable. Her hands were still intact. Even the roses placed on her body remained darkened but intact. 61 years had passed, but radiation had both harmed her and slowed the rate of decay. Her husband Pierre's remains, however, showed even higher radioactivity. Even today, Marie Curie's notebooks and laboratory tools are stored in lead-lined boxes, and they can only be examined with protective equipment. Even after death, she was dangerous. She discovered the light, but that light slowly consumed her. Today, she still rests beneath the dome of the Pantheon in Paris, as one of the most revered names in the world of science. But perhaps her true legacy is not the Nobel Prizes. It is the price she paid for science itself.